Ani bonjour, Chantal Werner Indishnikas, Ottawa Donjiba, Canada Donji. My name is Chantal Werner, and I'm a Algonquin First Nations, and I am the Principal of Indigenous Education with the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. So today I'm just going to talk about what Indigenous education looks like within our board, and it is twofold. So it is about supporting Indigenous families and students within OCDSB, as well as building capacity and understanding within our schools around Indigenous education and what that looks like as well. So I'm going to talk about what our board's commitments are within Indigenous education, and then I'm also going to get into who the team is and how we support what that looks like as a whole for the whole board. So the OCDSB is committed to Indigenous education in a lot of ways. And one of the things that we do is we partner with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. So we're dedicated to collaborating with our community partners and our members within Ottawa and the greater area. So for instance, we have collaborations with Inikatigi, which was formerly known as the Ottawa Children Inuit Center, as well as with places like Wabano and Odawa, Mawashin Lodge. There's a lot of community partners that we collaborate with in order to support our Indigenous students that are within our system, as well as supporting really building capacity and giving students and teachers the opportunity to have authentic voices in the class to really just support Indigenous education as a whole. So our goal is to, one, to build capacity, as well as to really offer opportunities for Indigenous students to achieve an academic success and really to try and build their well-being and their sense of place within the education system. We also want to improve the education outcome for all students. So what does that mean? Really, we're striving on a regular basis to really just have students graduate with having a complete and authentic understanding of in First Nations, Inuit, and Métis histories, right? We know that the history within Canada is not great, but what does that look like? And how is that really focused and changed society to being what it is? And what are the changes as we're going through based on what has happened in the past? We also want to give opportunities for Indigenous students to learn about traditions, as well as non-Indigenous students, to see what the culture is, really deep dive into like the beauty and the joy of what Indigenous communities bring to the school system and to the area that we live in. We are on Algonquin territory. So how does that Algonquin voice be brought into the classroom and really be focused on as a good thing? Because, you know, we bring so much, and this is the land that they really they lived on. My ancestors are from this land. So, you know, what have we brought to this area to help it grow and be what it is today? And we also look at the contemporary realities of where Indigenous people sit and what that means, as well as we focus and go through the education system. So we work with students and schools and the communities really to try and build relationships. You know, within our culture, relationships are such a big piece of who we are and how we strive. And that's not just good for Indigenous students, it's actually good for all students, right? How do we build those communities within school so students feel supported and heard? They feel like they're valued, because if those things are really in place, all we are going to do is build students up and really give them the opportunities and the tools that they have in order to be successful through the system. We also try and promote what Indigenous culture is on daily life in the curriculum, and really supporting how that looks throughout the year. So what does that look like in a history class? Are they teaching, you know, about the real history? Are they teaching about the 94 calls of action? If you look at the 94 calls of action, only 13 of them have actually been completed. And out of the 94 of them, 12 of them are directed on education, but not one of them has completed. So how are we as a school system and how are we as a community really focusing on really truth and reconciliation and supporting Indigenous students to feel heard and valued within the system, as well as how do we support non-Indigenous students in learning about what the importance is of reconciliation and how we get to those places? So we support student learning and leadership in many ways. So we work with kindergarten to grade 12. We try and offer learning opportunities by our instructional coaches that go in and work with educators to build capacity. We also have opportunities for Indigenous students to have time to go on the land and to learn from the land with the Indigenous staff members we have within the team. We also are trying and striving to have Indigenous spaces in all secondary schools by 2026. This is something we really are trying to focus on. Some of our schools currently do have Indigenous lodges. And one thing we've been really pushing is any of the new builds that we are doing or any renovations that are happening within the schools itself. How do we have Indigenous spaces for Indigenous students within those buildings as well? Because really having that place that's their own where they can go in, they can feel supported, they have the availability to smudge or have medicine is really important to who we are as people. And it really gets us through the hard times, right? It really, smudging is an important piece of who we are and helps cleanse any of the things that we're going through. So how do we offer that to students if that's what they need as well? So meeting the team, there's a lot of us. We are actually the biggest all Indigenous education team within Ontario, which is exciting. And really we are lucky that we are in this place. We go and talk to other school boards and they wish they were in the same place we are. So we have myself, so I'm the assistant principal of Indigenous education. There's Jody Kahoko. She is the principal of Urban Aboriginal Alternate High School, as well as community engagement and partnerships. We have Chris Mawasaki, who is the team manager. So he is in charge of the student support coordinators, which I'll explain as well. And so we lead a whole group of people. So it's a little messy looking, but it kind of gives you an idea of who everybody is. So we have 2 instructional coaches. One's an itinerant teacher for K to 8, and one's an instructional coach from K to 12. What they do is they actually go into schools and work with teachers. Our goal is to build capacity within the schools to support what Indigenous education looks like. How do we do that when most of our teachers are non-Indigenous? Is we have Indigenous educators going in and co-planning and co-teaching with these teachers and really focusing on what Indigenous education can look like in a good way. So we're trying to take out all the trauma and all the bad things that happen to us and really focus on beauty and brilliance to support not just Indigenous students feeling like they have a place within the classroom, but really just supporting all students to learn about Indigenous pedagogy. There's a lot of things that happen that teachers don't actually realize are Indigenous pedagogy until we tell them and point out it is, for many reasons. One, I don't think they feel comfortable at all times saying, oh, this is what I'm doing is Indigenous because of appropriation, but then also because they might not be aware that some of the things they are doing are actually Indigenous. So if you've ever seen The Third Path, it's something that goes through elementary school, and it's about building relationships. It's about connecting with students and really making them feel heard and valued in order to strive within school. All the things that are actually built into that are all around Indigenous education, but don't actually say it's Indigenous education. So those things are important. And so that's what the 2 instructional coaches do. Then we have our student support coordinators. So there's 6 student support coordinators, and they are broken up into by superintendency. So each, all the secondary schools, whatever school you go to or your child is going to, is based on the superintendent. So that school would be assigned a specific student support coordinator based on where they are. So there's 6 of them. There's multiple ways to access them. And what their jobs is really to do is support the student and the family. So it could be around, they're feeling stressed. They want to talk to somebody who's Indigenous. Sometimes you don't know as an Indigenous student that you're in a building and there's other Indigenous students without given those opportunities. I remember my history of going through school and not really knowing. I thought I was the only Indigenous person, and I didn't know there was others because there's no opportunities for us to actually meet or connect. So having a support worker go in and work with your child is really giving opportunities to maybe connect with other people they don't know about, or have someone to talk to about culture. It's really just to support them as a whole. They might even, if there's a lot of Indigenous students, bring in another community partner from one of the friendship centers and create a circle for Indigenous students weekly or bi-weekly to really support them in their learning journey as well. And then we have 3 graduation coaches. So we have one at Ottawa Technical Secondary School, we have one at Canterbury, and we have one at Gloucester. Currently, we're hiring for the one at Gloucester, but they will be in place by next week. And so they are there to really support students on getting through school. So what does that look like? What are their pathways? What are their interests? They try and help find opportunities for them, give them opportunities to really connect and just try and be successful as they go through grade 9 to grade 12. So they're successful in graduating. So they work with Indigenous students directly. They're also there as support for educators if they're having any questions or, wonderings about the culture or how to support specific Indigenous students within their class. We have a language program. We were lucky enough to hire 2 Inuktitut teachers this year. So they're going into specific schools and teaching Inuktitut as a language credit. In some cases, it's replacing French. In some cases, it's just an extra credit around language. And then we have Jennifer, who is a coordinator. We are currently in place of trying to hire an Anishinaabe teacher, but unfortunately, you can imagine it's really hard to do. So we are trying, and we hope to have that in place within the next year. And then we have 2 Indigenous social workers. So they're very busy because they're the whole entire board. But what they do is when a social worker is working with an Indigenous student and they feel that maybe a social worker who can connect more with culture is there or needed, they would bring in the Indigenous social worker to come in and work with the child to really help the child or the family around multiple different situations, but that's what they do there. And then we also have Kristen Riddell, who's the superintendent, and she oversees the whole program of Indigenous education under her portfolio. So we also have our parents, if interested, opportunities for parents to join the Indigenous Education Council. The Indigenous Education Council really is just an opportunity for parents to see what the board action plan is around Indigenous education, to help give advice on implementing the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. They help advise the board around First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students. So it's open to Indigenous parents as well as parents who might have Indigenous children. So they don't have to necessarily be Indigenous themselves to have a say in what Indigenous education looks like for their child if they're adopted or something. So they are also able to join to really just engage in what with other parents in the community, build a connection, and help support what Indigenous education could look like within our board. And so it's a great place to meet people as well as just really connect on what it looks like. And that's offered once a month. And so any information on that is available on the website on how you can join the council if interested. Also, you can reach out to Chris Mawasagi, who would help you learn when the dates are, where they're located for you to join as well. Then we have opportunities for students. And so these are the exciting things that Indigenous students get when they're working with folks on the team. And so how do they work with folks on the team? It could be in multiple ways. So your child's going into grade 9, or you're already in high school and you're like, I didn't know about these things or that they existed. So I really want to connect with somebody. You could, if you have a trusting teacher that you want to talk to, you can talk to them, you can talk to guidance, the office, and they will reach out and contact one of the support coordinators to come and work with you. The other way is every high school and elementary school actually has an Indigenous lead. So a teacher who's stepped up, say, I'm going to be the person who gains all the information, gets everything to share with folks. And so Indigenous leads also have connections to the folks on the team to get these opportunities available for your child or yourself if you're a student. And so we have monthly land-based learning opportunities. So we go to mixed skimming once a month from grade 7 to grade 12. And it's really an opportunity for all Indigenous students within the board to get together and connect. And you can learn about who different people are at different schools. It could be people within your school that you didn't really know existed to make connections with when you're back at school. And it's just giving opportunities to really get opportunities to really dive into the culture and have, there's fire building, and there's sometimes they have hide lessons of learning how to create hides and what they do with them. There is drum making, rattle making, there's beading, there's all these different cultural opportunities to really learn more about our culture or yourself. Because unfortunately, colonization made it that we didn't all learn everything the way maybe we were supposed to. So, I'm learning every day more and more about my culture because of history. And so what does that look like for students, and what opportunities can they have to connect with one another? This year we were really excited. We got an Indigenous student trustee. So, it gives students a voice. They connect with other Indigenous students and really get to bring their perspective to the board level and to the trustees to give their opinion on what Indigenous education looks like for students within our board. We also have a student leadership camp for senior students in grade 11 and 12 that's offered every year, which is a great opportunity to go. They don't go camping; they're in cabins, but to go and have a few days on the land with the Indigenous team, really meeting people who are in grade 11 and 12 as well, and just having those opportunities. We have a youth council available for students as well, and so that is, students across the board get together, they collaborate on initiatives, talk about what they want to see happen within the board for other Indigenous students. And then we also have the Indigenous Summer Learning Program, which you can start taking the summer going into grade 9, and it's a reach ahead. You gain a credit and you get to meet other Indigenous students within the board, and just lots of opportunities for students to really connect with one another and learn more about our culture and feel like they have a place within the education system. So that's all for the presentation. If there's any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I hope that you learned some information. If you have any questions or anything at any time, you can email any of us on the team. All our information and contact information is in the board website under the Indigenous Education team, Meet the Team. And hopefully you found out some information you're interested in. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording. If there's any questions, please pop them in the chat.